so we have a quorum, and the meeting will commence in public session. So the Select Committee is now in public session. Just to remind all concerned about mobile phones, without going through the detail, you all know what's required to do. We've no apologies, and this meeting is held as clear to give consideration of a Dáil motion in relation to the terms of the United Nations Minamata Convention on Mercury. I'd like to welcome the Minister for Communications, Climate Action and Environment, Mr Richard Bruton, TD. The presentation and supporting documents have been circulated to members in advance of this meeting. So, Minister, I'm going to invite you now to enlighten all of us on this important matter.
Well, thanks very much indeed. I hope it is something that will commend itself to the committee. Essentially, we are signing up to the Minamata Convention. It addresses all aspects of the use of mercury throughout the life cycle, and it sets out a range of measures banning mercury mining and so on. And we have signed up to it. We've signed up to it as a result of us enacting a series of EU legislative requirements which are in fact more stringent than the Minamata Convention itself. So we have put in place protections that go beyond what was required by the convention, but it's only that when that went into place that we are in a position to sign our own regulations that we signed in December. They provide an import and export ban on metallic mercury, a ban on production, the regulation of industries which use mercury that's in their processes, regulation and safe storage and treatment of mercury waste, and regulations on the use and environmentally sound management of dental amalgam used in the production of silver fillings. So in terms of the convention itself, it's been ratified by 102 countries, including 22 member states of the EU. In general terms, mercury isn't a major problem in Ireland. We have extremely low levels of identified presence in either air or water or in fish, or so we don't have a significant problem in this area. In terms of the implementation of the Convention and the mercury regulations, the EPA will be the competent authority with the responsibility for monitoring. The Revenue Commissioners obviously will have a role in relation to trade. The local authorities will have a role in relation to the safe handling and storage and sound disposal of mercury waste. The Health Products Regulatory Authority will have a role in relation to ensuring dental amalgam that is used by Irish dentists complies with the EU standards, and the Dental Council will ensure that the dental sector is aware of their obligations. So I think that is basically the picture. That's really it.
Thanks very much, Minister, for that succinct overview of what we've been asked to consider. I'll just throw it open now to members, and Deputy Stanley has indicated.
Yes, thanks to the Minister for the presentation and the officials. Could you just a couple of questions around it. I have a question just around mercury waste. I think that we have a motion here. You've signed it into law. And you signed it into law, I think, on the 14th of December. But the motion has to come before the Dáil for approval in the coming weeks, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah, what I've signed is the national regulations, but the convention then has to be ratified by the Dáil. But we couldn't move to do the ratification until those regulations were in place. Okay.
And the other couple of questions I had, one is around mercury waste then. Is there any issues of concern around that, or what may be done with that in terms of historical? There may be legacy issues there. I think that just to say at the outset, I suppose that that the regulations to replace the previous mercury regulations, I think, are good. The ban on the metallic mercury imports, certain compounds, and the regulation of industry, and the use of environmentally sound management of dental amalgams, etc. and the regulation of safe storage. I don't think we can. I think all of those we have to support them, and I think that certainly we should give this a fair win. But just if the minister could just address the issue of waste, mercury waste, that maybe that's legacy material. Are there any concerns around that, maybe from the EPA and the Environment Department's point of view on it? That's all.
Okay. The EPA monitor levels, which are extremely low. Now, I don't have the actual details, but the levels are extremely low. And when it comes to disposal, the procedures for the safe disposal, it is a hazardous waste, so it's set out in the same terms as the Hazardous Waste Directive. Producers of waste shall comply with the guidance provided by the EPA and are subject to inspection by the agency and local authorities, with those who fail to comply with these regulations being guilty of an offence. On the consumer front, some businesses and household electrical items contain small amounts of mercury, for example, compact fluorescent lights or CFLs. These items, when finished, can be either brought to your local recycling centre free of charge, or a retailer if purchasing an equivalent product. So we have robust processes for monitoring any environmental and managing the waste as produced. The sale of things like thermometers were banned back in 2009, but as you say, there may be still residue there in consumer hands.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Eamon Ryan.
I support the Minister and Department in implementing this European and international regulation. The world has changed a lot. When I was a kid, we used to play with mercury in our science class in school. Mr. Booth will remember the same, I'm sure. Can I ask a related question in terms of, this was agreed in 2013, I'm very much supportive of the measures, and here we are 5 years, as I read, am I reading rightly that 22 of other 28 European countries have already signed, already introduced the regulations? I have a general concern, Minister, and that your department, I mean, maybe one of the concerns I would have is that the reason for that delay, given that this is an area where we're not in disagreement, where it's not a major, because, as you say, our levels of mercury poisoning in water or air may hopefully accurately described by the EPA has been very low. So, and there isn't huge cost or other implications. It's only a €50,000 implementation fine. But I have a concern in general that your department may not have sufficient resources to cope with the whole variety of different undertakings it has responsibility for. And I just take this as an example. Is there a reason for that 5-year delay, or why were we are we in the latter end of EU countries signing the regulations and approving the convention? And just on a more general basis, have you, within your government departments or with the Minister of Finance and Public Expenditure and Reform, Minister Donoghue, are you, now you're whatever 7 months in, of the view that your department has the necessary scale to carry out the whole variety of different functions it has in the speed and urgency we need?
Well, the first thing is the actual European regulations were passed in 2017, so it was a year, well, at least a year later. There was stakeholder consultation seemed to be involved, so there was an element of that. I don't know whether I know from experience, drafting statutory instruments can get into a lot of delays. I don't think it necessarily reflects lack of ability in departments, but there tends to be a bit of a logjam in draftsman's office that has dogged every government that I've ever been a party of, and I'm sure the same with the Deputy. In terms of his wider question, I suppose I'm really bottoming out the issues in relation to our responsibilities. We have very significant coordinating responsibilities, and I think it's my belief that it's really important for departments who have a coordinating role. They have to a degree, bite with the President's teeth, and it's really important that I can get a cross-government commitment overseen from the Taoiseach's office to have the momentum to deliver. So, I'm not saying we need a whole army of people, but we need a willingness of decision makers elsewhere to get on board with what we're trying to achieve and our obligations and also our ambitions and the basis on which, I think you've often articulated yourself that sectors won't have a future unless they have a future designed to be robust in a decarbonised world. So I think like any department would always welcome more resources in various policy areas, but I think we're working very hard at the moment to try to produce a coherent plan in the first quarter of this year that will embrace all areas, and then we will work hard to drive other departments to implement their share and to see that we implement ours. So I don't think I can say I have a case for more resources and go knocking on Pascal's door or anyone else's door at this stage. I think we have to try and make the thing work. If at the end of 12 months you call me back here and some of the obstacles that have delayed us are our resources, I'll certainly be looking at those.
I accept that. I hadn't realised that the European regulations had only been drafted in 2017, which has that is the time frame you'd expect. And so, can I just ask one last question, if I can, Chair? Just and going maybe aside then from the quantum of resources, this department is also unusual in that a lot of the environmental responsibilities are quite divided up between the former ministry in down in Custom House, Department of Local Government and so on, and now your department. And it's sometimes hard to understand the dividing line between why certain environmental issues are contained within your department and others are still contained down on the Custom House. Is that level of, has that transition worked in your mind, or are you finding that it's hard to know yourself where the line is of responsibility when it comes to environmental management?
Well, I think there is a coherence to the brief that I hold. I think the climate action, the waste and energy, I think are natural bedfellows because they are about better use of resources, and so I think that is correct. Obviously, on the other side, I have a lot of the digital technology and broadcasting and post communications. Again, I think there's a certain coherence. They are very disparate. But I think there are huge challenges in those areas. And we've seen in, say, digital safety is a good example. There's responsibility in 6 departments for that. So I think rather than trying to consolidate a whole lot of departments, we have to learn to work across departments. And in the digital safety case, there is a cross-government plan. It was endorsed and launched by the Taoiseach. The Taoiseach, holds a certain amount of accountability for the delivery of that, although the Department of Education takes lead. I think that's the way we work. I think you can't be continually restructuring your departments because you see a coherence that may be not fully there. But I think although my department is disparate in its range, I think there's a coherence, and my job is to make sure that we make that work.
Thanks very much. Just, Minister, one thing finally. You mentioned mercury fillings as having been something that obviously is an issue. And this perhaps is a question from public health authorities. Are there any issues, or what information is available in relation to the current state of fillings that were provided by the state at a different time when the thinking was different around the health implications of mercury?
I don't think there's any danger from fillings themselves in that it's a very stable and hard-wearing compound, and that's why it was used when it's mixed with other metals. So it's not a risk of leakage or seepage from fillings. The issue is the manufacture, manage, storage, waste of the materials where they are generated. My understanding is that the sector itself is migrating away from the use of mercury in fillings. But at EU level, there's talk of, at an early stage, there's talk of regulatory changes to get rid of them altogether. Okay, thanks very much. That concludes our business. Minister, thank you very much. And a report will go to the Clerk of the Dáil to indicate that we have given consideration to this particular matter. Thank you.
The Select Committee stands adjourned until 5 p.m. on the 19th of February, when we'll meet the Minister again to discuss Vote 29 of the Communications, Climate Action and Environment revised estimate at that stage. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you.